All right, welcome to the Grafana Community Call for March 18th, 2021. We are going to be talking about documentation updates and more. I am Diana Payton, the Grafana Technical Documentation Lead. We also have Gita, Ursula, and Matthew, who will be introducing themselves as we get to their parts of this talk. So the usual disclaimer, this call will be recorded. In fact, it's being recorded right now. So if you do not want to be seen or heard, then you should turn off your camera and ask any questions that you might have in the chat. Alrighty. So here is our agenda. We're going to talk about the documentation updates we made for Grafana 7.5, some other recent updates you might have missed. Ursula's going to talk a bit about the Grafana Technical Documentation Style Guide codification that she's been working on. You're going to get an exciting preview about the exporters, and then the usual HR join us. We're cool. And then we'll open for Q&A. All right, so Gita, please introduce yourself and talk about the Grafana 7.5 OSS doc changes.
We don't see your screen.
Really? Oh my God. I mean, I've been doing this with, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing my screen. Oh well, this is live stuff, so it makes it charming, right? Okay, so here's what I thought I was showing you.
There we go.
Here's the agenda. All right, Gita, please introduce yourself and tell us about what you've been up to with Grafana 7.5 OSS docs.
Thanks, Diana. Hi, everyone. I'm Gita Chatterjee. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm the lead Grafana OSS writer. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the latest Grafana release, which is 7.5. Some exciting news, Beta 2 is scheduled for release tomorrow. We already have Beta 1 live. So if you're interested in checking out the new functionalities, you can download the software and play with it. You can also visit play.grafana.com, which has the latest version of Grafana running. And you can check out the awesome new features in Grafana 7.5. So moving on, next slide, please. I'm going to be, thanks, Diana. So I'm going to be talking about a few of the new features in 7.5. So I begin with alerting for Loki. What is this alert all about? In Grafana OSS, we have had alerting for various data sources like Prometheus, InfluxDB, etc., available from the Graph panel. This was not available for the Loki data source. And in 7.5, we have added this new capability. Next slide, please. The next feature I'm going to be talking about is Loki label browser. In previous versions, we had a Loki Cascader button option available in the Explorer view. That has been replaced by this label browser. And what it does is it allows you to quickly search for labels. For example, if you know the value, but you're not sure, what label to use, this browser will allow you to quickly, search for it and find a match. And using this, you can either show logs or show log rate, which creates the rate query. Next slide. And the last one that I'm going to be talking about is the pie chart panel. Some of you are familiar with the pie chart plugin that we have had in previous versions. You can think of this as the next generation of the pie chart panel, but unlike a plugin, this is actually one of our core panels. And what it does is it displays reduced series or values in a series from one or more queries as they relate to each other, and of course, display them in the form of slices of a pie. We have comprehensive documentation written for this available. You can click on the link to view the documentation. And, I will just end by saying if you have any questions about, all the other features that are available in 7.5, do look at what's new in Grafana 7.5. It has all the new features, deprecation announcements, and links to appropriate documentation. Lastly, if you have any questions on any of the new features, or just Grafana docs, or Grafana products in general, feel free to ask Ivana, who is one of the engineers in this call. So she writes code in addition to writing documentation, and we will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jita. All right, so I'm back to chat a little bit. And so we update documentation when new features come up, like for new releases, but we also update documentation just because we see areas that could be improved, which I have been doing for the manage user section, preferences docs, and permissions docs. So I'm going to, since I'm not as good at making slides as Jita is, I'm going to just give you a quick tour. All right, so with that, the manage users section is, manage users in Grafana is a little bit complicated because you can manage users as a server admin, an org admin. You can manage teams as a team admin or an organization admin. And then users can manage themselves a little bit. So I broke down all of the tasks that apply to each of these levels, and also added some kind of basic instructions for changing password, explained all about your user account profile, how to switch organizations, and hopefully this will make life a little bit easier for admins who are trying to manage users, organizations, and teams. So preferences in the administration section. Preferences is also a little bit complicated because you can do the same thing at 4 different levels. And so I explain both about the 4 levels: server, organization, team, and user, and about precedence. Short version is the lowest level takes precedence over everything else. And so each of these sections, such as changing the UI theme, has instructions for how to do this at the various, how to set the theme at various levels. And permissions, I didn't make a whole lot of changes here. I clarified some content in the permissions. I broke out the section about restricting access that was part of dashboard and folder permissions and gave it its own section because it really was separate from that. And basically clarified a lot of content and added this handy dandy table so that people can quickly look to see what the different organization roles can do. All right. And now, Ursula, please introduce yourself and tell us about what you've been doing codifying the style guide.
Yeah.
Oh, a quick thing. I do see questions and we will answer them at the end.
Thanks, Diana. Hi, I'm Ursula, and I am the lead writer on the Grafana Enterprise documentation. And today I wanted to share some work that I've been doing. I've been pairing with an engineer on codifying the style guide, and we're using Veil for that. And basically this allows us to collaborate asynchronously more effectively. So what we writers would typically tell someone is something that we can automate. Diana, if you can share the next screen, that would be great. We're linting on each pull request, and that's in continuous integration pipeline that we're testing at the moment. And I wanted to highlight some of the invisible work that goes on because we're working across about 5 different time zones, at least in some of the stuff that I'm doing. Diana's UTC -7, Matthew, I think you're UTC -5, Jita's UTC -4, I'm +1, and the engineer that I'm pairing with is on UTC. So I just think that's an important aspect of working together to get features developed across teams. And in this case, the engineers, I said thanks to Jack Baldry on the bottom here. You see him in the footer. If you have any questions after this, you can also ask him. With Veil, you can choose your style. There's an option for Google, for example, or Microsoft. And there are just many, many examples of suggestions that you don't have to write from scratch. This is an open source tool, or this functionality is open source, Veil is open source. And you can obviously add your own terms and suggestions. And I will be changing some of the suggestions from maybe a more negative tone to a positive tone. And so that's very, very easy to do. So people, when they're making PRs, they typically want to know what they want to do rather than what they've done wrong. And they're often short of time. So if we can just get them the information as quickly as possible, that's super helpful. And of course, if you have a linter, you negotiate once or as needed, instead of negotiating on a per PR basis, depending on which developer or engineer you might happen to be working with at a given time. We're planning on rolling this out gradually so that we can minimize any friction or eliminate it. So what I mean by that is that if we have a bunch of changes from a style perspective, we don't want to have 70 messages going to an engineer because we're introducing something that's saying, let's get these phrases and sentences more uniform across our documentation set. So I'll probably do some of the heavy lifting in terms of the details that need to be changed. Maybe it's a might, may to a might, for example. It could be changing a C to a refer to or things like that. And then I thought, well, maybe the next level would be potentially to generate a style guide from the linter source code. So if we have all of the rules that we want already in source, maybe we can just create a deliverable that contains that information. That's TBD, but it's something that came to mind. And yeah, just a shout out to Jack Baldry, who's the engineer that I'm pairing with on this. And there's another thing in the pipeline, which I can reveal in another call, but that's what I have for you today. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask any one of us or in the chat as well.
So Ursula, how will this change my experience of putting in a PR with documentation if I do something that a style guide disagrees with?
Well, you will have a suggestion that will either be a blocker, so maybe something we feel pretty strongly about, could be a misspelled product name or something we want to have spelled out. It could be a suggestion that doesn't block anything. So you'll see a text when you look at the pull request, and it's might be TBD as to who can see this at what level. Again, this is under development at this time. But the result of this ultimately will be more consistency across the entire documentation set.
Yeah, our goal here is, as I understand it, to try and help people both internally and in the community to write better documentation with as little effort as possible. So yeah, I think this is really cool. All right, before I do the exporter preview, I just realized I forgot to share something kind of important about this. So you see these edit this page and request doc changes links that we have in the Grafana documentation. Soon, these 2 links will be coming to all of the OSS documentation, hopefully this week, but possibly next week, so that you will be able to more directly help improve documentation for Loki and Tempo and all of our other OSS products. And there will be a feedback email link on the non-OSS products. if you want to tell us that there are typos or that we're missing something in there. Anyway, so Matthew Helmke, please introduce yourself and
So I'm
tell us
Matthew.
about your cool project.
I'm a senior technical content developer for self-serves for Grafana Cloud. So what I do is I write a lot of different sorts of things. Today I'm going to talk about a little microsite we're building about exporters, but I also handle all the cloud documentation and some other stuff. Have you ever sat in front of Grafana, whether it's Grafana Cloud or whether it's you hosting it, and thought, I have this data, I have it going into Prometheus, how do I export it from this app into Prometheus so that I can have it either scraped or sent to Grafana? Well, we lost the sharing. When you share your screen again, you can go to the next image. So what we've done is we are creating a subsection of the Grafana website that is collecting information about the various Prometheus exporters that we know about that are popular. So we're looking at usefulness, popularity, and we're also trying to parallel all of the exporters that have been used to build integrations into Grafana Cloud so that you can see you can do it on OSS installing this way and you can do it in Grafana Cloud this way. What we're doing is collecting all of the rules, all of the various metrics that an exporter sends, and we're showing you what they are in advance. And then we are going around and finding dashboards that work well with each of the exporters, because exporters are shipped and created without a specific dashboard most of the time. So we're curating a set of dashboards that work well with the various exporters. The first page is live, and if you go to the next slide, you'll discover that first several pages are live. There's a lot more content coming by the end of the quarter. We're going to also create an index page for all the exporters we're creating. And I think it's pretty cool. We're kind of in preview stealth mode right now. So everyone on this call gets to know first, because this has not been announced. This has not been shown to anyone except internally so far. So what I'm going to do is in the meeting notes, I'm going to put links to the ones that exist right now. And I'm also going to put a note about how to give me feedback. Now, I'm not the one who's created most of this. David Dorman has kind of pushed the project along. We have a contractor, Hanif, who is fantastic, and he's doing a lot of the writing. But we are trying to help both OSS users and Grafana Cloud users to do things a little more easily instead of having to search back and forth Prometheus docs, Cloud docs. Let's put a bunch of the stuff in one place, and especially you don't have to dig through code to find out what metrics are being sent and which dashboard is going to be the most useful. So there we are. That's what we're doing. I think it will be helpful both for everyone doing, using exporters with the OSS product, as well as with the Grafana Cloud hosted product. Send me questions. I will have details in the community call doc that I know is public momentarily. And that's all I have to share today.
Thanks, Matthew. That is very cool.
Pretty pumped about it. It's I think it's going to be awesome.
All right. And the slide to make the HR folk happy, Grafana is growing. We are hiring. Check out our Grafana careers page to see what positions we have open. And a shameless plug for our technical writing team. We are looking for a senior technical writer to work on Loki OSS. But yeah, you can find the link to that at the Grafana careers page. DM me, Gita, or Ursula if you have more questions about that. And speaking of questions, I saw one in the chat. Is there any plan or roadmap to have a span panel instead of using Explore for the tracing panel? I have not heard of any of that. I've heard mostly about the node graph panel, which I guess is sort of a tracing thing, a bar chart panel, and which is currently in alpha, and the XY scatter plot panel. Ivana, do you have any information about that?
So there's actually a GitHub issue for this, and it's pretty popular. We have added it a priority of long-term importance, so we know it's important. It's something that our users want. We plan to work on it, but we don't have it scheduled yet. So there is definitely a plan for it.
Cool. Anybody else have questions, comments?
I have a question regarding the Redis caching, which is coming in 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share more information about it? Because I saw your PRs updates in Grafana, but it's very limited. This is Redis, this is how you connect to it, that's it.
Ivana, can you talk a bit more about the Redis stuff? I know it exists, and that's about all I know.
I think I'm not the right person to talk about this because I'm not working with this plugin.
Yeah, and I thought there was some stuff in the backend enterprise. Ursula, is this ringing a bell for you?
It's ringing a small bell for me, and I would have to do research to get back to this question.
Okay, so Fidjar in the chat said, since Loki is suitable for multi-tenant, so with a specific tracing span panel, it's possible to limit the view of the Loki trace ID to the specific span. I don't understand the question or the comment.
I think that the best place to ask this would be our community Slack, and we have their channel Loki, and there are actually Loki developers, so they would be definitely the best people to answer this.
Actually, a better place to ask that would be community.grafana.com, because we have a Loki section there, and unlike the Slack, those answers will persist and are searchable on Google. So not only will people hopefully answer your question, because Loki developers are pretty active there as well, but then it will be there for future people who might have the same question or a similar question.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more questions? We love questions.
Another question regarding the dashboard lifecycle. There are multiple panels which come and will be in 7.5 and 8, which is time series, right? New pie chart panels. So when you create the dashboard and you're using graph panel in it, for example, right? And you provide this dashboard, you put it on grafana.com in the dashboard repository. Is it any way I can provide Grafana as a part of Graph as a part of this dashboard for version less than 7.5 when it's not available, and have it as a time series for version 7.5 or 8? Same with the pie chart. Or it has to be removed manually?
Not that I am aware of. Ivana, any ideas? Yeah, because usually you have to have the panel in the version that it is introduced in or later. So, because earlier versions of Grafana wouldn't have any idea what to do with the new panels.
Right. My question is about, as a plugin developer, how do you, and especially as an application plugin, I have some menus which is pointed to the dashboard, right? And I want to use the time series, for example, for 7.5 or 8. And with a new version, how should I have like a couple of menus for version less than 7.4 and 7.4? Other way, because I really like the new time series panel for the streaming. It's great because graph panel is kind of slow, right? The time series works great. Still, how I can support users on the older version and the newest version as well.
So I know that for sure Marcus Olson would know about this because on our internal meeting he was talking about actually a problem that some people hide their version, so it's not shared with the plugin developers, and he was discussing like what would be the best option, how to fix this. So I don't have the answer for you, but I would definitely reach out to Marcus because he is the best person to ask.
Yeah, Marcus Olson is also very active in the plugin Slack channel, so he might be able to help you there. And he's usually in these community calls, but he had a conflict today. I think he also has office hours, which you could see on the Grafana community calendar, which is public, and I believe it is also linked on the agenda document that you used to get here.
Okay. Yeah, maybe office hour is a good way. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, any more questions? As I said, we love questions.
I have one more.
Sure, bring it on. This call is for you guys. So we will hang out for as long as there are questions or until it hits the next hour, whichever comes first.
Right. It's regarding alerting. So I asked you in Doc's Slack channel that this alerting have to be updated for the community plugins, right? I'm not sure if it's done or not, but my question is more about when you do alerting, you kind of alert on all the fields returned by the data source, right? And it's happening on backend, as I understand, not on the front end. So you cannot use transformations to choose specific field I want to have alert on. Is there going to be any improvement for that? I saw there is an alert new generation is working on right now.
Yeah, so there is going to be improvement. It's going to be with Grafana 8. We are working on improving alerting. But yeah, what you said is correct. Like it's done on the back end. You cannot apply any transformation. So it's just like what's the response from your query. I'm not sure if it's going to be like this specific possible in like alerting the newer version. But I know that it should be definitely like more flexible, and yeah, maybe some I'm not sure like from Doc's team if anyone is already working on the documentation there, if you have more info.
Patrick asks, when is 7.5 due? So currently the beta 2 is scheduled to be released tomorrow, and we are tentatively planning March 23rd for the stable release. That is subject to change because we've had a few high priority bugs that required immediate patch fixes. So like I say, it's scheduled March 23rd right now, but that is subject to change. But soon. So most likely sometime next week. So fingers crossed. Hope it didn't just jinx us. Knock on wood-like product. All right. Anybody else? Any more questions?
I have a question. If we have a question for the people on the call, actually, if we want to get
that is
some
great.
User feedback. Anything from how you read the documentation? Do you tend to jump in and code something, figure something out, and then read the documentation? Do you read stuff first? What's your preference? Do you use any tools to read the documentation? I know, Fadyar, you said your English is not your native language. Do you use any Google Translate or anything or any other tools that help out in this regard? Or does anyone else have any feedback about this? Reading docs in general?
I have a feedback. I mean, it's not only for Grafana Labs, it's in general. The problem, I mean, when I started working with Grafana half a year ago, there was a lack of documentation in many parts. And documentation was improved so drastically in the last half a year, right? It's a really good job. And every time when I'm looking for something right now, I see so much more information exists, which was not exist before. There is only one problem, how I can understand that something changed in the documentation and not following PRs in Grafana.
Yeah, we're trying to get better about letting people know about that. I will, if it's a non-release documentation update, I'll usually post an announcement in the public docs channel. And we've been trying to be more extensive and detailed with the what's new document. You might have noticed the last few what's new in Grafana version 7 dot whatever have been a lot longer than previous what's new. We've been making a point of trying to add to both be more detailed so that people know what changed and to link from those new features to updated documentation. So most of the features, in fact, almost all of the features have links to the documentation updates that they pertain to. There are just a few back-end items that didn't actually require documentation changes, but we included them in the what's new so that people were aware they were happening. So.
In addition to that, there's conversation that there are conversations that I'm having on the enterprise side about how to make things more consistent across products. And so even simple things like making things structured so that it's more easy to simply read a changelog. And then comparing from a content strategy perspective, if we have what's new over here and a changelog over here and another changelog over here, we're putting this together in a common picture, so to speak, so that you know, okay, this is the scope of what I can expect to be able to read, and the changes are going to come in a streamlined experience. So when you're experiencing this as an end user, as a user of Grafana, you can know, okay, well, I'm getting what I can expect to get in terms of the information about changes. So to say that less verbosely, we're looking at this from multiple angles across different parts of the products.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to have like an RSS feed or something.
Diana, one thing that's interesting. So you mentioned, Mikhail, that in the last 6 months there's been some positive improvements, and there's a reason for that. Diana, might you want to say something about that?
Well, about a year ago, or a year and a half ago now, geez, I started improving the documentation and making some major changes. And about, 4 or 5 months ago, Jita joined up. And so at this point, we have 3 technical writers on our team and are hiring a 4th. So, yeah, we've basically, Grafana Labs has been putting people and money towards improving the documentation, and I'm really pleased with the progress we've made. What you guys can do to help is let us know if where we can improve the documentation. We love feedback. We don't get enough. Let us know what is working for you, what is not working for you, what needs to be expanded, or what is wrong, if there are any mistakes in the documentation, because we don't know what we don't know. And well, we are very experienced software writers. We're not experts at most of the data sources because there are a lot of data sources and there's a lot to know with all of them. So, by all means. And we also love it when people provide documentation that we can add into the documentation set. So, we love community involvement, and we are happy to try and make it easier for you. There was a question about localization in the chat. We have, I'll probably send this to Ursula because she's our expert on localization, but we've been kind of debating about how best to do that, because the thing about localization is it adds a lot to the workload on our side, and it's also very complicated because there's both the documentation. Yeah, sorry, go for it, Ursula.
Oh, it's okay. I can say a little bit about that. So it is not on the plan right now, the schedule or the plan, definitively, so that if people are, have expectations about something like that coming out, we just need to be very clear about that. What that does involve is it's a very large project, and we do get offers for help about translating into various languages. And I know Matthew has some experience involving community members in translation in his previous role, if I understand correctly. We do need a lot of planning for that because, and I basically did a brain dump internally and have about 4 pages of things to consider in terms of questions, from knowing, for example, which region of the world we would go into and whatnot, and then what that would mean. And there's also, you know, things from a legal side. It's not always the case where you can simply sell a product with in another country without translation. So every region is different. There are different requirements for different regions, and the enormity of the project is something that we need to chew on, you know, bit by bit to be able to make this more manageable. And for starters, the very first thing that's required, I think, for such a project is to clean up the source language, which in this case is American English. And so we have a lot of work to do. And yep, it's true, Anjita also. So thank you for mentioning that, because we do internally have quite a lot of experience. We even have a person on the UX team has been a professional technical translator. So we do have people to lean on when the timing is right. And that is still going to be TBD for the foreseeable future.
So Fajar, yep. Since we've got you here, when you talk about translation, are you talking about translation of the Grafana UI or translation of portions of the documentation? Okay, so translating the documentation is a lot more complicated than translating the UI. So because it wouldn't be just translating the documentation we have today. It's also translating all the documentation we have in the future, checking to make sure the translation is correct. And yeah, that's a heavy lift. Right now, we're kind of starting with what we're looking at is, could we potentially enable the community to translate some portions of the Grafana UI? And if we were going to translate some of the documentation, which parts would we translate? Because all of it would be a little bit complicated, but there might be some parts like the getting started and installation that makes sense. Like I say, we're still discussing this, and it's something we're paying attention to. But yeah, Gita, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I actually, this is not related to translation, so I can go after we have finished this, talking about this topic. But so I'm just going to pause. Like,
I think I'd kind of gotten to the end there. So
okay.
Yeah, the only thing is that it's definitively not scheduled and not on any roadmap, but we are very much, we have the resources internally to understand just how big this project would be.
Yeah, we have the resources to understand that right now we don't have the resources to do it.
I think the big thing is finding customers that have very specific language needs and are also large enough customers for us to have the economic capability of committing humans and other resources to translation. It's not a no-cost thing. So that's a huge foundational issue. Is we just got to figure out the money and the return.
The business need, definitely.
So my question is for Mikhail, and this is, incredibly excited to hear that, you follow Grafana documentation, and you can see that, efforts are being made to improve documentation and add information. So my question is, you mentioned that every time you go, you find more information. Do you find it overwhelming, or is there a mechanism or something, we can come up with, like that can help you quickly identify what is new, or maybe, get some kind of a message or some kind of a marker that, within this topic, these are the new sections? How can we help you like quickly see what was older information as opposed to what is new?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm a very visual person. I mean, having with what's new in the documentation section by PRs is great with new release. For me, I would say will work like quick video. This is what was changed recently, like 30 seconds, 1 minute video. We changed the plugins, we changed documentation for users. The same was what Diana did. Just make this small video, post it everywhere, right? Everybody will know, oh, this is what changed here, this is what changed here. Because there was one particular issue with the streaming. It was changed in 7.4, and the documentation changed. There is something we had to do. I didn't do that, and then I had to go into documentation, and Torkel had to tell me, oh, this is a part of documentation now. But I had no idea that documentation was updated. Now it was not a part of that before. So I mean, clicking on every single PR in what's new documentation is great to read it, right? But it's not efficient for the users, especially when you have, I mean, Grafana is one of the products you're using.
That's fair.
Definitely. That's a good suggestion. Definitely.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback.
Something visual and quick to go through and done. And you can post it on Twitter and LinkedIn.
That would require me to tweet.
That's a really good suggestion, and also we're currently focusing more in the content strategy perspective. So this is feedback we can directly take to this.
Yeah.
This
thing. And yeah, I mean, with regards to tweeting, Sam or someone else can probably help. But I think from what I understand, a quick short 30 seconds or 1 minute video, and that gets posted everywhere. So you know, people are aware of like what topics were touched upon and what new information was added. So great feedback.
Twitter, this is the way how you learn about the news and what's happened, right? So I mean, everybody, when you have retweet likes, right, you eventually, if you're interested and you follow Grafana, you will see that. And this is, I mean, easy way to get updates.
Get off my lawn, you young whippersnapper. Yeah, making me feel old. Any other questions? All right, going once, going twice. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to this community call. Thank you to everyone who participated for the great questions. For everyone watching on YouTube, the slides will be posted when the documentation or when the video is posted, so check that out. And please feel free to leave any comments on the YouTube video or questions. We will check those periodically. And for everyone else, if you want to give us, by us I mean the writers, me, Gita, and Ursula, your opinions on the documentation, reach out to us on public Slack, and we might be able to arrange a quick meeting, so that because we would love to hear what you think of the documentation, what's working for you, what's not working for you, and how we can make things better. So how can we help you? Let's work together and make the documentation even more awesome. So Gita, Matthew, Ursula, anything to say in closing, or Ivana? By the way, Ivana, how's your avocado plant doing?
It's doing good.
Yay.
I'm not sure if anyone knows, but you prune avocados, so you cut most of their leaves, and it looks very drastic, but then they become larger. So it looks very poor, and it's smaller, but it's doing better.
Do you use alerting?
Yeah, so I'm not using alerting because I have a visual display showing me how the avocado is doing, and I'm just at home all days. But I was planning to also when I go away to do alerting, so I know if my boyfriend takes a good care of the avocado.
Yeah, that's great. Get a Slack notification or pager duty alert.
Yeah.
It's good. I have one more suggestion, by the way. If you can help Marcus with the application plugin documentation, because he wanted to do it for months, and it's one of the recent questions from the community on Slack. you can help him.
By the way, I have one thing related to this. I know that in Explore, we are also improving documentation for plugins developers on like what you should implement if you want to use Explore, different features in Explore. So I know Andre is working on this. So just this question reminded me of this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Mikhail. Great suggestion about the plugin documentation. I'm sure we will be in touch with Marcus Olson. I know Diana is in regular touch with Marcus, and we will follow up.
Oh, let's
Okay.
be real. He's going to watch this video. He's probably going to edit it, the beginning parts of us flailing with the Kermit arms, and me talking about how my arms are disappearing into space out of it. So no worries about that. All right.
Yeah, thanks. This has been good.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Have an awesome
Thank
day,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.